Welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is 10 cards you should be putting in your Commander decks, episode 23. Starting out this week with Brutal Horde Chief. 3 and a black, Orc Warrior, 3/3. Whenever a creature you control attacks, defending player loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. And you can pay 3 and 2 Boros hybrid mana. Creatures your opponents control block, and you choose how those creatures block. Really powerful card, a fantastic card in any aggro strategy in Mardu colors. I don't think I've ever seen it in a Commander game, maybe once. Of course, has to be played in a Mardu deck or any deck that has red, white, and black in it. That first ability is just great. Whenever a creature you control attacks, defending player loses a life and you gain a life. But that second ability, making your opponent's creatures block and you get to choose how they block, that's really good. I think it should definitely see more play in the format. Coming in at number 2, Bubble Matrix. 4 mana artifact. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to creatures. That's it. Again, this is just a very unique card. I don't think there's any card in the game that does this. A permanent that just prevents all damage to all creatures. That's combat damage, blasphemous act, whatever the case may be. It's colorless, so it can go in any deck. What strategies do you use this in? I don't know. I guess you could just use it in a strategy where you don't want your creatures to be dealt damage. You can use it in a strategy where you don't plan on attacking ever, and you just want to leave your creatures up as blockers because they can just sit there and block all day long, right? I'm sure there's a few decks that this can go in, and just because it is such a unique card, I always like to mention those cards so that people know they exist. Coming in at number 3, Bubbling Muck. 1 black sorcery. Until end of turn, whenever a player taps a swamp for mana, that player adds an additional black. This is just the black version of High Tide, essentially, right? I think most people know that High Tide exists. I don't know how many people know this exists. Really just a fantastic ritual effect in a black deck. If you're looking for that quick ramp, just 1 mana. You know, it does work for all players, but it's a sorcery, so you're going to be doing it on your turn. Chances are your opponents aren't probably going to benefit from this. And of course, this is going to work a lot better if you have an Urborg. If I have 5 swamps in play, I tap 1 to pay for this, and then I have 4 left, which are all going to produce double mana. So 8 mana out of my 4 lands is pretty darn good. So a really fantastic ritual effect. Another fantastic ritual effect, Burnt Offering, which is also a 1 black. This one's an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, add X mana in any combination of black and or red where X sacrifice creature's mana value. So this one is black and red, so obviously you got to play it in a Rakdos deck or a deck that has both black and red. Probably going to want to play it in a deck where you are sacrificing creatures. Works pretty good with a Scornful Egotist, I think. There are situations where maybe I can cheat a creature into play via sneak attack. I attack with it and it's going to die anyway, so now I can just pay 1 black mana, sacrifice it, and get a ton of mana on my second main phase and go to town. So definitely could work in a lot of decks. Coming in at number 5, Burnout. 1 and a red, instant. Counter target instant spell if it's blue. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So it's a red counterspell for blue. But basically what it is it's I counter your counterspell, right? That's probably where you're going to use this. I'm mentioning this card because yes, it is very unique, but also I've just had so many people tell me my play group was putting so many counterspells in their deck. My LGS is high powered, lots of counterspells. This is a way to deal with that. You know, if you want to play a mono red deck, maybe you want to play that Diochan deck and play something a little more low powered and fun, and you want to help compete with those other guys. This is an option for you. It's essentially going to be used to counter another counter spell or a Cyclonic Rift. Obviously, it's really good against. Also, it replaces itself, which is great. And you can actually target something that isn't blue. So say, for example, you have this in your deck and nobody in the group has a blue deck. I don't know if that ever happens, but let's say it does happen. You can still use this. It's not a dead draw because you can just target a Swords to Plowshares with it because you're targeting an instant spell. And then if it's blue, it counters. I know it's funny, but the way it's worded is that it only counters it if it's blue, but you can target anything. So that way you still get the card draw and it replaces itself. So it's never going to be a dead draw. So that's also good. Coming in at number 6, Burn at the Stake. 2 red, red, red sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, tap any number of untapped creatures you control. Burn at the stake deals damage to any target equal to 3 times the number of creatures tapped this way. So this is just a great finisher. I mean, you can use it to get your opponent's giant creature off the table, but typically I think you're probably going to use it just to, I smoke my opponent for 15 or 21 damage or 24 damage, whatever. You know, if I got 5 creatures, I tap them, it's going to deal 15 damage. I have 8 creatures, it's going to deal 24 damage. That's a lot of damage, and it's a great finisher, right? You have to tap your creatures down, so if you're in a goblin deck or any deck where you have lots of little creatures lying around, this is just a great way to finish off one of your opponents. Coming in at number 7, Cadaverous Bloom. 3 black and a green enchantment. And this is the first enchantment I've mentioned on this list so far. Wow, how about that? Very interesting card. You exile a card from your hand, add 2 black or 2 green. Can be a really powerful ability. People will play this in their Damia Sage's Stone decks because you can obviously exile the cards from your hand to get mana, and then on your upkeep, you'll just refill your hand again. I think there's some combos there with that where you can take extra turns and all that kind of jazz. Though this is great if you're just, you know, you have a lot of draw capabilities. Also, I was thinking is really neat with land tax. Again, land tax is a card that it's filling your hand constantly. That's the part of land tax that people probably don't think about a lot, is that it's always keeping your hand full. So now if I have a land tax, I can get 3 lands on my upkeep and put them in my hand, and then I play 1 land, and then I can exile the other 2 lands to get that ritual effect. And I can do that every turn, assuming I have less lands than my opponents. Pretty fantastic, I think. But just a really unique and interesting card that I think definitely needs to be mentioned. Coming in at number 8, Call of the Wild. 2 green, green enchantment. And you pay 2 green, green, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your graveyard. That's a really powerful ability, and I just did a deck doctor video for one of my patrons, and he had a Rata Heart of Keld deck, and I thought, you know, obviously you're going to play a lands theme with this, but you may look at the top card of your library at any time. That's a really powerful ability that if you're making a Rata deck, you should be taking advantage of that, and Call of the Wild, I think, is a fantastic fit. Because you always know what's on top of your library, if there happens to be a creature on top of your library, you can just pay 4 mana and put it directly into play. That's pretty fantastic. Any deck where you are looking at the top of your library. Maybe you got a Sylvan library, maybe you got a Miri's Guile, maybe you got a Sensei's Divining Top. If you're playing an Amaranth deck where you're looking at the top of your library a lot, if you're playing a Sidisi deck where you might be looking at the top of your library a lot, this is just when there's a creature on top of my library and I know there's one there, I reveal it and put it into play. And also, it goes into the graveyard otherwise, so maybe if you're playing that Sidisi deck, maybe there's something on your library that you actually want in your graveyard that isn't a creature and you can pay for and it goes into your graveyard. So a little added bonus there. Coming in at number 9, Callus Oppressor. 1 blue, blue. Cephalid 1/2. You may choose not to untap Callus Oppressor during your untap step. As Callus Oppressor enters the battlefield, an opponent chooses a creature type. Tap, gain control of target creature that isn't of the chosen type for as long as Callus Oppressor remains tapped. It's just a really great card. I mean, obviously there's the politics angle where you can sort of use the politics here, but you don't even need to do it in a politics way at all, to be quite honest. All you do is you just pick the opponent who you're not going to touch him. Any opponent who they're not doing very well and you're not concerned about them, you pick that opponent. They're going to name probably their commander, whatever their commander's creature type is, because they don't want their commander stolen. And then everything else is up for grabs, right? Any other creature on the table, you can now steal and keep stolen for as long as Callus Oppressor remains tapped. It is a cephalid as well, if that means anything. I mean, I have this in my Abishan deck. It is a cephalid, but also it's just a great card, so it could go in there anyway. It really could go in any blue deck, I think. And coming in at number 10 today, Captain's Hook. 3 mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, has menace, and it's a pirate addition to its other types. Now, that's usable. Maybe you want to put this in your pirate deck. I don't know, but you probably already have pirates in your deck. However, the reason why I'm mentioning it is because of that second ability. Whenever Captain's Hook becomes unattached from a permanent, destroy that permanent. And it has equip 1. That's really important wording, okay? And I think a lot of people have already identified this for an Ardennes deck, right? Because Ardennes, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may attach any number of auras and equipment you control to target permanent or player. So you can put Captain's Hook on your opponent's creature and then just pay 1 and put it on a different creature, put it on one of your creatures, and then that creature gets destroyed. It just becomes 1 mana, I can destroy a creature. So it's definitely an auto-include in that deck. There isn't a ton of effects, like Magnetic Theft is another one where you can attach any equipment to any creature. There isn't a bunch though. However, I was thinking if you had any deck where you are stealing creatures, this might be a fantastic include. If you think about a card like Act of Treason, I steal my opponent's creature, I'm going to gain control of it temporarily, I can pay 1, equip Captain's Hook onto it, now it's got +2/+0 and Menace, so now I can swing with it and deal some damage, and then I can just pay 1 mana and unattach that, attach it to something else, and now it's going to get destroyed, right? So I really think it is a fantastic fit in a I'm stealing my opponent's creature deck. Because now you're basically holding their creature hostage, right? At any time, you can just pay the 1 mana. I guess at sorcery speed, you can pay the 1 mana and unattach it from their creature, and their creature gets destroyed. So pretty interesting fit in a couple of different decks there. And that is it for today. That is 10 cards you should be putting in your commander decks. Give my TCG player link a click if you feel like buying any of these. Helps support the channel. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.